Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IRSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Jamie University. It is spring game day, instant reaction show. We are going to be talking about everything we just saw in the spring game. I imagine a lot of Sam Hartman talk. He had a great game. Jaden Greathouse he's got to have set some records today, Jamie. 11 catches for him, I think it was, over 100 yards. What a performance by the freshman receiver. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a lot of defenders who on the defensive line. We were texting about that, Jamie. A lot of good looking players on the defensive line today. Jaden Osbury showed out. So we're going to talk about all of that. So thank you, everyone, for joining the show. If you haven't taken advantage of the ESQ clothing promo that is out, today is the last day. ESQclothing.com. Go over to that site and 23% off of all purchases. Today is the last day. ISD Spring, put that in the promo code. That's ISD Spring. All your shopping needs, all your luxury shopping needs with the dress shirts and all that. Marcus Freeman wearing ESQ clothing. The players are wearing ESQ clothing. Today is the last day for that. So pop over to ESQclothing.com, 23% off, ISD Spring. Thank you, everyone, for being here so far. If this is your first time, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. This will be released as a podcast as soon as we're done. I'll put it out in the pod feed, so it'll show up there. And if you want to catch us there, there are links in the description below on Apple and Spotify. So, all right, Jamie, a lot of people in the chat right now. BG making a joke, Hartman stunk. CFB Hertz is lamenting the fact that Notre Dame lost, got shut out. The blue team got shut out, Jamie. It's tough. Everyone's in a bad mood about that. I think we have to start out with Sam Hartman. And, I think while it's one of those things where it's like, look, whoever plays well, you want that to happen. But I think everyone really wanted Sam Hartman to come out and look good.
Oh, yeah.
At the very least, you want him to come out and look good. I mean, he was the reason for all the optimism going into the offseason, right? Big transfer. And I want to talk about this from this is how Sam Hartman played. I want to stay away from a comparison to the quarterback battle. I know everyone's talking about that, but we were texting about it. Buckner and Minchie, to some extent, like they got kind of the raw end of the stick with the offensive line and the blocking and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
So I want to stick, because I don't want to spend a bunch of time like commenting on how Tyler Buckner looked. He didn't look great. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but I just want to talk about Sam Hartman and how he looked. And that's what Notre Dame signed up for. That's what you wanted to see. Look sharp. 13 to 16. I think it was 189 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. 1 rushing touchdown. Looked good straight away, Jamie. It was really nice to see.
I thought he looked really good. Just comfortable.
Yeah.
In the offense, that's the thing. He just looked totally comfortable out there. Obviously, like, he was well protected, right?
Yes, he was.
He was well protected. Probably something like I don't know what the line was in the game, but I would have put money on the gold team if I probably took a deeper dive into the O-line, D-line difference between both teams. I think they had a pretty big advantage, and just having Alt and Carell, I think, and their guards were better. They were quite a bit better, but I mean, he took advantage of it. He looked how you expect him to look. And that's the other thing. And it's something that, Kyle Rudolph mentioned during the game too. He's going to be protected better than he has been at Wake Forest. He's going to have that. He's going to have more clean pockets. He's going to be able to have time in the pocket and get to a second read and do all these kind of things. And I just thought, everything from his RPO stuff that he did, just how comfortable he looked with those reads, just overall accuracy, his kind of chemistry with Jaden Thomas.
Yeah,
I think it really, really stood out. Jaden Thomas looked fantastic. I thought that was something that, stood out too. Obviously, he didn't stay in the game long, but early on, he showed that. I mean, he's a dude, right? So, I just thought if you were going to say one thing, the number one thing that any Notre Dame fan would want to see out of this game, it would be Sam Hartman looks great. And he did. He did.
He looked as good as any quarterback has looked in the Notre Dame spring game. And I was talking about that. I mean, I think Ian Book it was either 2017 or 2018. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but he looked really good in a game in one.
It was the 17 year, yeah.
17 year. I mean, he looked really good. Did some numbers. He did some numbers in that game. It was pointed out, like Malik Zaire had a really good 2015 game. Just throwing touchdowns to Will Fuller and hit Justin Brents, I remember, on a crosser, but he looked as good as you can really hope for. I mean, 13 and 16. He did have the one where it's like, look, and I think that's a lot what you're going to see from Sam Hartman, right? Like 13 and 16 on point. He did have the one where he's rolling out. It was kind of a broken play. Made a bad decision.
Should have thrown it away, yeah.
And it wasn't a good pass either. So
no.
That's kind of that's why he's throwing a bunch of picks, right? Because there's little things like that.
But it is a spring game, so you can kind of get away with doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, that is definitely the kind of thing that in that game you want to see him throw that away, and also too just shows you kind of like some of the luck with it too. Like, I mean, it probably should have been picked, whatever.
It should have been picked, and then he goes down and scores a touchdown. You know, so it's like the drive's about to be over. So,
but I mean, even if you look at like the very first play of the game, I mean, Nana,
don't horse collar
your teammates.
Please don't.
Like literally, like that would have been absolutely like I think even though he's a veteran guy, they love him. He's a hard worker, a leader in the defensive line room, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you could yank a scholarship if Thomas was out for the year or something there. That was it was really bad. Fortunately, I mean, as far as I saw, it didn't look like there was any major injuries or anything like that. So that was good. But yeah, that first play of the game, I think it just showed too, that should have been a TFL. It ends up being a first down because of the 15 yards. And they just rolled from there. And then I think too, because I think they were able to run the ball better inside. Like Jabron Payne had that one big run, and it was a bad fit by Drake Bowen, right? Yeah. He kind of got a little bit over aggressive, which that's
right. He cut it back, but it's understandable because he went the play came back opposite play side. And like it's just like it's such a common.
It's like a fine line, it's like,
it's
just something
he's
like
trying to get in there.
First series of the spring game. I mean, he wants to make a play, whatever, right? I mean, Drake Bowen played fine. Other than that, right? I'm just stating that was why that. But it just like you kind of got it rolling from there. And Payne looked really good.
He did.
He looked really good.
He did.
He obviously looks healthy. I mean, he showed that why Notre Dame would want him. And Dalen McCullough was like, no, we got to get this guy as soon as he was like, I'm bolting Indiana because, I mean, the guy's got talent. And he's got talent in terms of like what he can do in space and maybe as like a kind of a slot guy too. So in a weird way too, I think he kind of needed it because you got JD Price coming, you got Jeremiah Love coming. You got to be able to separate yourself because Diggs and Esteme are going to they're going to have their roles, right? So
yeah.
Payne is trying to be the number 3 guy. And I think, based on some of the stuff that we saw from spring, some of the stuff we heard, and just here today, say he's, front runner for that spot right now.
And we had talked about him, what it meant that they had moved Lorenzo Styles off of offense. So that means that Chris Tyrese, it kind of has to be like full-time slot now because of that. And that means that Jabron Payne, number 3 back, right? They ran with 3 last year, and it looks like he's going to be able to do that. So that kind of solidifies that situation for A, Tyree, and B, for Payne. That's really good. Something else I want to point out, we're talking about the run that Jabron Payne had there, and it was poor read by Bowen there. But I mean, at the same time, that's Rocco Spindler, right? Capitalizing on the mistake, and then Emil Wagner sealing off the backside creates the hole. And I thought, if we're going to talk about how Sam Hartman had the better of the 2 offensive lines, you got to bring up that Spindler and Wagner on the right side. They're a big part of that. And look, for Spindler, I mean, great to see. I mean, that is really nice. And I think that you've talked a lot about why, the coaches have talked. They really like Emil Wagner. They're very high on him, even though he's a little bit light. I thought he had some nice size in the lower body. It's kind of an upper body thing.
Yeah.
I thought his legs looked pretty thick there. And look, for a smaller guy, he handles himself pretty good.
He can move people in the run game.
He can. Yeah, he's got some real strength there. I think there's really something there, and I really like those guys.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too is that you saw kind of later on. I mean, he got really when he was trying to anchor against Tyson Ford. He got thrown basically on the one play. We'll get to the defense later, but Tyson Ford had certainly.
He did. He had a really good game.
But I think that's kind of like where I would worry about Wagner more in terms of like anchoring in against like speed to power and stuff in pass pro. But in the run game, he looks good. He looks good. I thought Billy Schrauth looked pretty good today too. Like I liked how those guys looked at just overall. If you're going to take one kind of main positive offensive line, like, okay, yeah, you're not going to judge anything with Joe Alt and Blake Fisher and Zeke Corral in the game today. Like, you know what you got there. You wanted to see from the other guys, and specifically those young guys, because I think everyone knows that the highest ceiling is for Notre Dame is for those young guys to be factors, right?
Yeah.
It's for those young guys to be factors. And I mean, they all had good days.
Let's stay with the gold offense a little bit. What do you think this, let me see if I can ask this the right way. Jaden Greathouse. That's who I'm talking about here. I mean, this is like a clear, like super opportunity for everyone, myself included, to like overreact to this.
Yeah.
That looked really good. I mean, because here's the thing. We've seen receivers do numbers before, not like this, but we've seen it in a spring game. It's usually on like a ton of volume in terms of, like, I remember like a couple years ago, I think it was the 2020 spring game.
And Keys had like
5 but he had like 13 targets.
Yes, it really wasn't a good game, but it was kind of, because he had a couple of big splash plays.
He had a couple big splash games. Greathouse might have been 11 for 11 or 11 of 12. And that to me is the thing where it's like every time they threw to him, he caught it. He's falling forward. He's getting those little bit of
tight coverage too.
Yeah.
Where he's like winning body position, which fits. That fits with everything. If you've watched Jaden Greathouse, and the guy scored like 1 million touchdowns he scored more touchdowns at one of the top high school programs in the country, let alone in the state of Texas. He's scored more touchdowns than anyone ever in the history of his high school. And a lot of that is because this guy, there's like a savviness to his game in terms of like body position. He's got like a veteran savvy when it comes to that kind of stuff. He knows how to win with his body, like boxing out guys. And he's strong. He's strong for a guy his age, which is why he always was a guy who was projected to play early and contribute early. And I mean, I would say too, if they didn't have Jaden Thomas in the slot, you'd be like, I mean, Jaden Greathouse is going to be your big slot. But but here's the other thing. I think what it does too is, and obviously I mean, he got a lot of work in the spring throughout too, but just when you have a game like that too, and you're looking at it, and not to say whatever, it's tough to judge some of the other guys too, like a Deion Colsey didn't really do much today, right? But I mean, in saying that, when you're looking at where you're at on the boundary, and you feel good about Jaden Thomas as your big slot, and you got Tyree in the slot too. I mean, if it's overcrowded there, then you say, okay, well, Greathouse, can you be our guy in the boundary, or at least a guy who's pushing on the boundary, right? Yeah. And that's kind of the way to look at it. I mean, I think, there's certainly like Braylon James and stuff as a guy who's going to get a look there too. And like, they could always shift Tobias there too. And it'll be interesting to kind of see, but I think that it just shows you got good options.
Yeah.
He's a good football player.
He's good. And the other part too is like, let's say you go into a game and something happens to Colsey and he's out. It's like, well, maybe we want to move Jaden over to the boundary. And then it's like, okay, we have options. We can play Tyree and then we can play Greathouse in the slot.
Yeah.
Right. It's like a 1 or 2 game, 1 or 2 game thing. And it's like not a big deal, right? It's just he doesn't need to be the guy, but it's like as a stopgap. That's the kind of situation what it is. Go deep. Can we talk with the Merriweather talk Kevin Austin all over again? Here's the thing. I'm not taking away from any of the receivers on the blue team, right? None of the quarterbacks look good. They didn't have time. Like they just, it wasn't there for the blue today. They just got the short end of the stick. I'm not
like, are you down on Audric Esteme because he had no room? Like that is basically that kind of reaction, right?
Yeah.
What has he done? I mean, you haven't been there, Go Deep. You haven't been at the practices. So I don't know what to tell you. Like he's looked good at practice. It's not to say that he's, he's got to prove it on Saturdays for sure.
I mean, I'm not going to stop talking about it. He's going to start.
Well,
he's going to start to the field. So there's no question.
Chancey Stuckey, his position coach, is the guy who's giving him the hype.
And
Parker and Jared Parker, the offensive coordinator. I mean, I don't think those guys, they're not just praising him if he was trash. Yeah, in practice. They just practiced. What are you supposed to do? They're not playing games right now. Like, I don't even get it. I don't even get like the unnecessary like Kevin Austin hate. It's like, hey, you know what, Kevin Austin, they could have used him last year. Could have used him last year. Kevin Austin wasn't as good as Chase Claypool in 2019 or Miles Boykin in 2018. He still was better than a lot of guys. So I don't know. Like, how about just let it play out and just like see what happens? I mean, I don't think no one is coming from today gonna praise any of the guys on, like you said, the blue team and say like, man, just whatever. Like, because there's nothing. But I think it's just like the kind of thing where you just kind of, Buckner, when he was interviewed at the end, kind of said it like, you just kind of throw it away because it's like, it's a spring game, right? That's just the kind of way you got to look at it, right? And I don't know. Like, I don't know. I mean, I didn't bring it up, Matthew. I sorry how to pronounce it. Somebody else brought it up. So, I mean, when someone brings up something that I disagree with the point, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we weren't even talking about him. Why'd you take a shot?
Okay. Why don't we talk why don't we transition to the blue offense today?
Okay.
Or right now, because I do think, because it is fair, right? And I assumed that, and I'm watching the game and I'm thinking to myself, man, people are going to really be down on like Tyree and Colsey and Tobias
and Buckner and everybody
and Buckner and all those guys, right? And you watch it and you just know, right? Like you just that's what it's going to be. And for me, I don't have any sort of like, I'm not going to draw any conclusions from it. The only thing with Tyler is that he didn't have the blocking that Hartman had. I mean, it was evident right away, right? Just straight away. Like Hartman was standing back there in the pocket. He had time to go through multiple reads and he went through them. The only thing with Tyler is that there were times when he did have time, like on the one drive,
for sure.
On the one drive, he throws the out route to Tyree and it's covered by Osbury. Look, first of all, it's a really good play by Osbury, right? You're covering a true senior out there. And he jumps it and it's going to be a pick. It's not going to be a pick 6 because he's not going to outrun Tyree there. But he throws an interception for all intents and purposes.
That should have been a pick 6 for sure.
And
bad throw.
Right. And then on the next one, what happens on the next one? I want to say he took a sack.
He threw the pick he ends up throwing on later on the series. He throws the pick to Mickey.
He throws the pick to Mickey.
By Mickey for sure.
It's a good play by Mickey. It's a good sink by him. But it's one of those things like, it's not that the decision's bad, but the placement isn't great.
Yeah.
It's got to be over the top. It can't be undercut like that.
I'll say it wasn't great ball placement. And I can't remember if that was to was that to Tobias?
No, it was to Colsey.
It was to Colsey. I personally my thought too, like you said, I don't think it was a good throw. I mean, easily, like it was a play that Mickey made a good play. and it was picked, and it was like where the ball was thrown, it was like, I mean, he left it right there for him to pick it. In saying that, if I'm Colsey's wide receivers coach, I'm like, go back and fight to knock that down, man.
Yeah.
He kind of, I didn't like the effort there. I just personally, whatever. And like I said, I'm not going to judge Deion Colsey on that one play or just be like the whole day, or like he had a bad day because whatever. But just personally on that play, I would look back on that and say, I thought he should have, you're not going to catch it, but it's your job to make sure the other guy doesn't catch it.
Yeah.
Right. So that was the way that I viewed it. And I just think like it's hard to get a rhythm when just as the offense as a whole, not even just not talking about Tyler Buckner here, but just that entire group, when they weren't getting like any real good positive plays on first down ever. Like even when they ran it, it was like, even when Audric was still in the game, it was like he had to like scrap to get like a 4-yard gain,
Mm-hmm. Well, and like the first play of the game, and you can tell me what it was. He slides the protection right.
Yeah.
And Patelho is left unblocked.
That's,
so I don't know if that's like a missed assignment on terms of like,
I don't think that's,
I
didn't think, we talked about it. We were texting during the game about it. And I don't think that's Tosh Baker's fault.
I don't know. What I mean is it a bad call pre-snap by Buckner? It's like,
I will have to go back and look at that to see. But I also too, I don't know if that's another kind of point to bring up with, the other team had Corral, Gold had Corral, and that's something where Corral is going to like be part of that communication process and stuff too. And that's, something that you don't have. So, I don't know specifically, what happened there. In saying that, as you kind of look at it, it's like that free rusher is on Buckner, right?
Yeah.
That is on
Buckner.
Buckner.
He is responsible for the free rusher.
He's got to get the ball out. He's got to get the ball out, or just whatever, right? Like that's kind of that's the way. But obviously, you do that, and you're like the whole first drive is screwed up because of that. And then I thought in the last one, I know Baker got beat by Patello, but I thought it was a great move by Patello. I love that swipe, and just Jordan Patello looked really good.
He did.
He looked really good. I would say, Brian Haney mentions here about the Peacock is terrible. I think the stream is bad. Like the quality of it isn't great. Yeah. But I miss that they used to have Paul Burmeister do it. And I think Burmeister, and I'm sorry, I don't want to, I can't remember the name of the guy who was calling play-by-play for this.
Tony Simeone.
Yeah. But just Burmeister, I just think is better. He's really, really good. Rudolph is, they're just giving these guys reps, right? They're giving Kyle Rudolph reps. And I thought he, after kind of like a pretty vanilla start, he got more comfortable and did better with it. And I thought, it was nice. Not like Kyle was like, he's not going to go right into broadcasting right now or anything like that. But he was fine. He had some good insight.
I thought Kyle Hamilton was good. I did. Yeah, as the kids say, no cap. I thought he was good. I thought he did a good job.
And I think Caroline Pineda is great. I think she's great.
Yeah.
I think Caroline Pineda should be, and
she should be on the regular broadcast.
Yeah, shade at Zora Stevenson, who I thought did a fine job last year. And in a pretty thankless job to be that sideline reporter. You got a hard thing, but you could just tell Caroline Pineda does her homework, probably knows because she obviously was just a Notre Dame student pretty recently, probably knows many guys on the team pretty well. And it's good and professional and just good. Like I just imagine her being on like TNT doing an NBA game in a couple of years or something. Like she's good. She's very good.
Scott R says thoughts on Devontae Jean Baptiste. Why don't we take this opportunity to just talk about the defensive line as a whole? We can start with Baptiste, but what did you think of him? What did you think? Because I know you were really impressed with the defensive line as a whole.
Yeah.
What did you think of him first, and then the rest of the group?
I mean, he didn't really like pop for me today. I don't think he looked bad or anything like that. He just didn't pop as much for me today. I would say just in general, like I didn't think like him or Nana. I mean, both the guys who were like probably like 1-2 at end. Those guys just didn't really jump out to me out of everybody on the defensive line. And I thought, I mean, Onye to me really, he just jumps out because he plays hard, dude. Like he plays really hard.
He had the one sack where he came around
Yes.
and he was kind of slow playing it, and as soon as Angeli
Yeah.
got out, he 2 steps and he was there. And it's like, whoa, like that is now we talked about the upside on previous shows. Like that's where you see it. It's like that ability to close on a quarterback, to where it's one thing if you can win against the lineman, it's another thing to be able to close the sack.
Yes.
And that's that. So that was really I wanted to
that was impressive.
That, so
I thought it was really, really impressive because I think too, because on that play, you know, and I'm not sure if that was just an adjustment or if they were running a stunt on that play. I'll have to go back and rewatch. But like Wagner was kind of like almost surprised by how he kind of got around and looped around there. And that's just the kind of thing you don't see from a lot of guys, especially who are one techs.
A one tech, yes.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say.
Do not see that. I mean, even I would say too, that's the one thing when you would say with Jason Admirola, I think who's a really good player for Notre Dame. Obviously, like a guy who made plays, was a really disruptive guy at times.
Yeah.
Wasn't a great finisher in terms of that kind of thing. And in those kind of situations, he wouldn't run down like a quarterback in that situation. Yeah. That was something, I mean, it's, and you think of Admiral as like a really kind of like athletic interior guy. But yeah, it was pretty impressive. It was pretty impressive. Yeah. So like, I think Onye stood out in a mostly good way, just about the entire time. I was really hoping to see a lot from Tyson Ford, especially because, you know, he had to play a lot, and I thought he looked good. I mean, some of it too is like him, like overwhelming, but he's the first step to getting into the rotation is like being better than the 2s and 3s that you face on the O-line.
Yeah.
And I thought he was just like that for most of the day. I thought he looked good. I mean, he looked just like was playing with the edge. I liked what I saw from him. I thought Gobert he really jumps out with his motor. He's just this guy who plays. He just really jumps out. I mean, I think he's going to be a heck of a player. I think Tui Halamaka had some nice plays today.
He got a sack on alt. Like, granted, it was like one of those. It took a long time, but he chased the quarterback down. That's
I think that. I mean, Burnham had that nice like strip sack too. Yeah. It's kind of all what you want to see from a lot of the young guys is just that, like, you know, you don't overly judge anything harsh about like guys like Mills and Cross in games like this, whatever, right? Because it's like either good or bad. You're just like, meh, whatever for them. Because especially when it's like, I mean, this is like their 4th or 5th string or whatever, right? Like, it's a different story for those guys, but you're looking for the young guys to really step up. And I thought I liked what I saw from the young defensive line, and it was like, and then I thought too, Botello, like, okay, the first one, first of all, too, Botello 2 years ago would have just like taken Buckner's head off, and just on the first play where he got the free shot, and then he probably would have just taken it, and then all of a sudden like been kicked out of the game or something. So good restraint from him, much like the Clemson game where he had good restraint to not destroy Miles Murphy. I just thought he looked good. He looked good. Just so overall, I would say defensive line wise, they look pretty solid. You know, a little bit worried about the depth at defensive tackle. You know, just the deeper parts, like the threes at defensive tackle. But I think they're going to be pretty close to 3 deep at end. So always like to see that.
Yep. Let's see. Chris Jenkins is asking about the linebacker play. I think Jaden Osbury really flashed for us. With Marist and Bertrand, those guys.
I mean, they barely played.
They barely played, so nothing to take away from them. I thought Osbury stood out. I think, and physically he looked good too. That's the other part. It's like he doesn't look too small. I thought Jalen Sneed, honestly, he physically is very impressive. He was running around. He looked really good out there. Ziegler's gotten big, so that's good to see as well. He's a big boy. I mean, anyone else? I think Drake Bowen. I thought he was really active.
Drake Bowen. I mean, Zinter. Nice to see him get a nice little stuff on the 4th and 1. I always want to see those young guys have success. I think Osbury really just kind of Osbury and Sneed were the guys that stood out the most for me. Sneed mostly because he was playing inside linebacker and didn't look like he was lost ever. Like he didn't look like he looked like he was playing free. And I would say one of the things when I watch Prince Cully sometimes is that he would look lost, especially last year, where you're like, this guy, when he can run and chase a guy in space, he looked fantastic, right?
Yeah.
But when there was other plays inside, he just didn't look like instinctive or like confident. And I mean, obviously we didn't get a chance to see him in this game. I wish we would have got a chance to see him in the game. So it's like, I'm just judging that based on last year. And I think with Sneed last year, he was a guy who just kind of played out of control. When you saw him in there, he was just like, you could see him flash and what an athlete and just, kind of like some of the violence that he would bring. But he didn't look like he knew what he was doing, right? He just, whatever. And here he looked like you still saw that exciting athleticism, but he just looked a lot more playing within himself in a good way. And then I think Osbury too, because Osbury's not a big guy, right? He's not big, he's about like 215-ish or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he just the way he moved and the way he played in space. He obviously made a ton of plays on the perimeter in this game. And I think Notre Dame's defense last year, it's a primarily, nickel was their base, right? Nickel was the base. Bracey's like basically in for the rover. Like, I don't know, 75% of the time or 80%, whatever it was, right? That was their base defense. And it really was kind of like getting their best 11 on the field, really. And this, and not to say Osbury is going to be, because he's a true freshman still and whatever, and this is a spring game, whatever. But it did make me think of like, oh, he's a guy who can actually like cover some slots, and like doesn't look out of, and definitely cover tight ends and like, but definitely like run with some slots that you just, Jack Kaiser, who is an effective player in a lot of ways when he's at Rover, he can't do that. That's the one thing where he was like really limited. And, whenever he got asked to do that, he kind of got exposed a bit in that way. And he's much more of a better athletic fit as an inside linebacker. Obviously he didn't play today. He wasn't available, but Osbury looked more JOK-ish to me, just in what he can do. And that kind of gives you the freedom to maybe play a rover. And I'm not saying they're going to do that this year because it's a lot to ask of a true freshman.
Right. Just going forward.
Do that. But just in the future, that's what I was thinking when I watched it.
Yeah. Daniel McCarty's asking about Jaden Mickey. He says he's around the ball and had an aggressive pick. Did his stock rise? I don't know if it rose so much as like, I think that he's kind of had a bounce back, and it was good to see like doing all the things the right way. And that pick included, right? Like that's a really aggressive play and it's a good athletic play. It's also a very good technique play where it's like you're exactly where you're supposed to be. If the quarterback puts the ball where he put it, you're going to intercept it, right? It's doing your job. It's being a playmaker. And that's what you want, right? And I think that it just kind of increases it's like, hey, when Cam Hart when he comes back, they're both going to be to the field. You can rotate those guys a little bit. And I think they're going to need to rotate Cam Hart because he's had the shoulder for a bunch, right? I don't think they can have him playing the entire game all the time. And so you want to be able to kind of give him a little bit of a break. And so on that sense, yes. But I think they really like Jaden Mickey. And I think that Jaden Mickey's kind of his stock should continue to rise.
I think you just kind of validate everything you kind of we heard and saw, basically.
Right. Yeah. So let's see. Jay is talking about Tyson Ford again. He's going to be a dude one of these days. He moved really well at 295. He definitely looks the part. And I think that's a good point too. Like he looked really good, and he's kind of going through like a body change. He's got to put on weight. He's got to put on some muscle and do that sort of thing. And so a lot of the time when you have a guy going through a body change like that, it takes a little bit. It takes a lot of time for them to adjust. Tyson Ford is obviously ahead of the curve there. And so that was very nice to see. Someone I predicted would be a really nice like talking point at the end of the spring. So that was good to see that validated.
Tiller Reese brought up that Coley's 250. No, he's 228. So that's
he's a big boy now.
I mean, I think he came in and when he was like a true freshman at 215. Yeah. But no, he's good size. I mean, he's definitely physically developed since he's got to Notre Dame. And Osbury's just, I mean, the guy should still be in high school.
Yeah.
Right. Like I mean, saying that, I don't think he's ever going to be huge. But he's easily the smallest linebacker on the team. Like you mentioned, Greg, that Nolan Ziegler. I mean, he's really looks like in a year he's really progressed in terms of physical development.
Yeah. As far as the defensive backs, not much from them today other than Jaden Mickey made that really good play. No. It just wasn't like a defensive back kind of game. I mean, Ryan Barnes was very involved, I will say. I think the numbers on him would probably be not great. Like he gave up, I think he was in coverage against Salerno on the corner route. I mean, I think he had a couple breakups to give a bunch of passes. I mean, like that's kind of the way it goes, right? If you're going to, especially when he was, I believe he was opposite of the gold team. And so look, when the quarterback's 13-16 or whatever it is, right? Like no one's going to have good numbers. Like I thought like Ben Morrison gave up some stuff, right? Although he had the really good chase down of Salerno. I mean, it's like, he's just an incredible player. Like came from nowhere. It's just big time.
That's like they should have just sat him after that and been like,
yeah. We're good. We're all set.
We're good. We've seen enough for the rest of the spring. Yeah.
What do you take away from this as far as Buckner? What do you take away?
I mean, it certainly wasn't a good day for him, right? I mean, I think you chalk it up to it wasn't a good day. But I also would evaluate it like he wasn't working with the same thing that like I would have loved to see if they would. I mean, they weren't going to do it, but I would have loved to see if they switched it at some point and then he got to work with the same group that Hartman did. And how he did, and how he performed then. I don't know. I mean, he still didn't. I mean, he didn't help himself today, but and from the sounds of it too, and I mean, not just from the sounds, but just everything. Like Hartman started slow and got better as the spring went on. Obviously, great finish. I don't think Buckner's, started fast and went bad or anything like that. But I mean, in every little thing, when you're in a quarterback competition, it's just it's a data point, right? And you take the part of like, he wasn't working with the good old line or whatever, but then you say, well, I mean, that throw to that Osbury should have picked was like, that was just a really bad decision, right? Or if you look at, I mean, I'm sure they'll evaluate whether or not that very first sack of the game, like if he made a wrong call there or whatever, like that goes into the evaluation. So all of these little things are part of it. I mean, I wouldn't say that they're definitely not going to be like Hartman. They're not going to name Hartman before they get to camp or anything like that. But I mean, if you just said like, let's just say like Buckner was like slightly ahead today, then you'd be like, well, at the very least they're even, or if they were, if they were even, then you'd say, well, Buckner's definitely ahead going into the summer. And then you just readjust from there, because that's the thing. You just get to go again. And I mean, there's no reason that both guys shouldn't be way better in the summer after you get the spring, right? So you got to see where it is.
So Tyler Reese is bringing up an interesting point. Parker didn't call a lot of RPOs for Buckner, and that made me think.
That's true.
I do think Buckner is the type of quarterback that needs a game plan set up for him against a specific defense. Like, we know what the defense is. These are the plays that we're going to run. And I think that a spring game is not conducive to that. That's just like, hey, we're just running some stuff. You know? And it's like, you can't run.
That's a really good point, Greg.
So like, I don't think that it's conducive for him personally. And that just kind of highlights like why Hartman, because I said, and not just me, but both of us, like on a lot of our shows, like they're talking about how Buckner was playing better and Hartman and what didn't look as good. And it's like, look, Hartman, the kid's been around for a long time, right? Like, he's been around and he knows how to play, and eventually he's going to figure it out. Right. And we had mentioned on our last show, not the last one that I couldn't because my internet was a debacle, but the one before that, like, people were talking about how there was the open practice, the surprise open practice, and everyone was saying how good Buckner looked. All the reporters who were there, right? It's not reports. They were there and saw it. But we had heard after that there was the Saturday scrimmage, like the 90 play, whatever, and Hartman looked great. And that was what we said. And so Hartman figured it out. And so, look, the thing with Tyler is there's always that consistency, and there's always that little bit in there. And unfortunately for him, in terms of the fan base, he showed that again today, where it was, you're making bad decisions, and when you make the right decision, like, okay, it's 4th and 9 or whatever. And like, I don't want to get into like too much, but like, I'm watching, it's like 4th and 9 and you throw a check down. It's like, maybe that's the right play, right? Like on film or whatever, but it's like, don't throw the check down, especially when you're not really being pressured. Like, it's stuff like that. And not just that, but then it wasn't completed, like there's too much of that. Like, we saw it in games last year.
That reminded me a little bit. That kind of play reminded me a little bit of the early season Buckner.
Yeah.
Where you're like, run here, run. Yeah. This is, I know it's a different thing because they're supposed to touch you and whatever, but no, run. Like, Hartman had one of those plays where he's like, oh, I'm just going to run it here. Right. Like, you got to do that. And I think that was the thing about the Gator Bowls. He played a lot more free. And like you said, I thought Reese called a really good game to get him, like,
for what his skill set is.
Yes. So he's like, well, guess what? We're going to call that that kind of like buck sweep with the quarterback, right? We're going to do that now to kind of get him going. Like, and that's just something that I think helps a guy like him. And in this kind of game, you can't really do that. So it's
because there's the thing about Buckner, like, he didn't look anywhere close to the way he looked in the bowl game. And that's like a real game. That
matters way
game.
More than
that's a football game. Like, he looked worse than he did the last time we saw him play in a football game. So like, that's where, to me, it's like there were a lot of things, and it's one of those things though. Like, it's like there are reasons that he didn't look as good, but then there are also reasons why beating out Hartman is just going to be very difficult for him. And that's just the way it goes, like Notre Dame went out and got a dude. And so that it's an uphill battle for him. And that's what we said, right? Like, is it a quarterback competition? Listen, he can play well enough to where they got to play him, but that didn't happen. And the other part too is Sam Hartman has a say in it as well. And he's not just gonna get beat out, like, he's really good. So that's the problem. He's a really good player. Chris Jenkins
Ed's got a good comment here. This one,
it is tough.
I would say that would have been my complaint about the.
Let me just read it for people who are not watching the thing. For the Blue Gold game, I wish announcers would treat it differently and spend most of their time telling us who's on the field, where, and what they're doing. That's a good point.
I think, yeah, that's something that, and I get it. There could be lulls in a spring game when you're doing it, but especially for Notre Dame fans who don't, there's so many, everybody thinks that, most of the people who are listening to this podcast or watching us on our live stream right now, I mean, they know who Jaden Osbury is.
Yeah.
They're like, they knew when he first got offered. Like, they're like into it. They're very like, they know everybody. They could name me every 85 guys, the scholarship guys on the roster. They could do all of that, right? But for the other, 90% of fans or whatever, they don't know who Jaden Osbury is.
Well, look, who's in on offensive line? Who's playing right guard?
Yes.
Who's playing left guard?
Or
stuff like
just
that.
Or just little things like being like, Andrew Kristofic is playing right tackle now. He's not normally a right tackle, but they need to play him here.
Yeah.
In this game. So then, it's just a little thing where you could just say, so when he got beat by Burnham on the one play, and it's like, okay, yeah, it was a good play by Burnham, but then you also take it for granted. You're like, well, Andrew Kristofic's not playing tackle, but he has to play tackle right now. So you take that into account and you say like, oh, a tough beat for Kristofic, who just doesn't normally play tackle, and he's helping out a tackle in this game or whatever, right? Like all that kind of stuff. And I get it, because most announcers won't do that and be specific about it. But I think for a spring game, when there's so many people playing and it's whatever, it's so important to have like people who really, really know the roster. And again, I don't want to say like in terms of like Kyle Rudolph, like, man, I hope he's able to have like a career in this, like doing this and being a broadcaster and stuff too. But he probably doesn't know the team as well as maybe someone else. I mean, Ryan Harris did it last year, and you'd probably make the same complaint. He calls every game for Notre Dame, right, on the radio. Right. So I guess it could be a common complaint. But I don't know. I do think it would help. In that way, you'd almost be helped if there was like a 3-man booth in that sense, because there could be like the one person who's just like, I'm going to tell you about this guy. Like, I'm going to tell you about this young guy that maybe people don't really know about or whatever, right? And or I'm going to tell you about how, Kristofic's playing right tackle and he shouldn't be. Or I'm going to tell you about how Tyson Ford, came in and as, played defensive end in high school, and now he's going to do this. Like all these just little kind of things. And now he's 295 or whatever. Yeah. Like, I think that kind of stuff does enhance a broadcast.
Chris Jenkins is asking, why are they still running on second and long? I made a couple of tweets about this as a joke, right? And to be clear, I'm joking. I don't care. You got to get plays on tape. You have to get some run plays on tape. You have to evaluate the players. Yeah, you have to. So if you throw on first, almost regardless of what happens, they got to run some plays.
You're not calling it like you're calling a real game. So that's
because you're not game planning, right? Like you don't know specifically what plays to run. Like 2nd and 10, what are they likely to run? Therefore, this is what we're gonna run. Like, so like that stuff. I'm joking about it, but I don't like it, right? It's like, generally speaking, I hate any second and long run.
So I would just say also just like scheme wise the entire game. Because somebody asked earlier about like, what did you think of like the new OC and how they called the game? It's like NA, not applicable, right? Like, because you just can't. It's just so different. And the defense you're facing is like not at all what the defense is going to look like in the fall. Not just personnel wise, but just like what they're going to run. And it's going to look so different. Like perfect example is like how, we went to that one practice on April 1st, the first open practice media, and they were like in that big dime, like the whole practice. Mm-hmm. And they didn't show any of that in this. I mean, there's zero reason to show any of that because they don't need to put that on film for anyone, right? But like, it's you can't really judge anything based on kind of scheme or play call on it. It's tough in this kind of atmosphere.
Adrian Devora asks, it's a hard question to answer, but based on what we saw, who do you think the starting guard should be? I understand this can change quickly just based on today. And you've heard some things throughout camp too, so let's factor that in. I'll ask this. Do you feel like Spindler showed you enough today, and based on other things you've shown, because in my opinion, he is in contention.
I think he's in the mix.
I think he's definitely in contention, and I don't think we would have said that going in the spring. I think that's definitely true.
Oh yeah, I did not expect him to. I thought he really needed a great swing to kind of put himself in it. Like I would have just. I don't want to say like I completely wrote him off, but I definitely was thinking he was like a dark horse guy a guy who's.
We heard things this spring that we have not heard ever in a positive way, right? So he is definitely trending, right? Definitely.
Well,
trending.
He would never be brought up by Quinn or Jeff Quinn or Harry Heastan just as a guy you just brought up for doing well.
Right.
And Rudolph brought him up to be like, yeah, he is. He's had his couple best of his practice days. So like, I mean, does that mean he's going to be the starter guard? No, but it means that I think based on today and what we've heard and like what Rudolph said and kind of what we've heard and what we saw from him, he's got a shot.
Yeah,
he's got a shot. And I would say it's like too early to say who is going to be. Like, I know I couldn't even pick today because you could say like, I think if you said based on today in the spring, I would say, I mean, Kristofek, no, he would be a no for me, but I don't think that's set in stone at all. Right. Like he could easily be a starter. You
think Strouth is the leader in the clubhouse?
I think Strouth is. I wouldn't even put anyone as a leader in the clubhouse because I just think it's like one of these things where it's like pick the combination. It could be any of those combinations, really, right? It could be Pat Coogan, starter net guard. Like it could be, right? Like, so I would say the contenders as of now, I think would be, Spindler, Strouth, Kristofek, Coogan are probably the top four. And then we'll see. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens, but I couldn't even say if like, you're like, oh, Strouth, whatever. Like, I mean, it might be Spindler, Kristofek.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Right. Might be Coogan and Kristofek. I don't know. Right. Like we'll just kind of wait and see. And then the other thing is that now that they have the entire spring to kind of evaluate, what if they decide like, these aren't our 5 best guys? We need to look at like, what if they're like Tosh Baker? We're going to give him a real look at guard or something, right? Like he did, like, and that's something Rudolph did mention that they thought like, oh, maybe we'll look at him there, right? So something like that, right? Like, So I think it's all kind of up for grabs, but not in like a bad way where I'm like, oh man, this is like dire. I think they'll find 2 good options there. I just don't know who those 2 guys are going to be yet.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to a comment or a question from Chris Jenkins from earlier. I want to get to it. I know you're all discussing the game, but y'all's thoughts on Styles and in the portal. Jamie wrote a instant reaction kind of post on that's on irsportsdaily.com, and I recorded like a 10-minute video that's on our YouTube feed as well. So you can check those out on Styles specifically. But I think after the game, after watching the game and looking at it through the lens of Lorenzo Styles himself, I understand it now. It makes a lot of sense because you look at Jaden Greathouse. If Lorenzo Styles had done that in a spring game, it would be like if he had done that today, people would be over the moon with him, right?
Oh yeah.
And he hasn't looked like that kind of ever, right? He hasn't caught the ball like that, like working the ball in zones and that sort of thing. That just hasn't been his deal. There are different types of players. Like Styles is a more speed guy, but that's another guy. It's like you got to keep him off the field, and you got to keep Tyree off the field, and you got to keep Tobias off the. Like there's just it's a lot of ways for him to like, okay, so now I want to go to DB, right? Well, now he's got to compete with Morrison and Hart and then Jaden Mickey, who looked good today, right? And not to mention Clarence Lewis, and so you kind of get it. Like, yeah, the playing time was going to be tough. Now, I'm not saying he couldn't get on the field. He could, but it's like, man, am I going to?
He was going to be tough. He was going to have to outperform guys who were clearly already like established that they are going to play.
Right. It's like, am I looking for 20 snaps a game, or can I try to go somewhere I'm going to get 50, 60, and that's where it was.
He wants to, I mean, yeah. It also would be much different if you're like, oh, he only, like, imagine in that 2021 season, imagine that was the COVID year. So that didn't count. And then he still had 3 years left. Well, then you can judge it differently, but he's only got 2 years left.
Yeah.
Or that was a 4-game thing, or whatever. Right. But it's like, no, he's only got 2 years left.
Yeah.
So,
and then Christian Gray as well, who everybody love.
So what would be better if you were him, right? If any of us were him, so he comes and just imagine he's like, okay, I believe in myself. I think I'm good enough. I think I can like make an impact at corner. So then what happens if, like, say, even if he just like tweaks his hammy in camp or something like that, and then it doesn't really give him a chance to even show that he can get that. Well, guess what? He's not going to play more than 4 games. He's just going to be like, he's going to do that 4 games and he's going to sit out and then he's going to transfer and go 2 years somewhere else. That's just what would happen. Right. So is it better for him now to get out and try to get a fresh start somewhere and try to go somewhere, especially where like the path is a little more clear? Like, put it this way though, if he transfers to Ohio State, like, I think that's just so stupid. Like
that's tough.
That would be dumb.
You have the same problem.
I get it like whatever. He's obviously
his brother's there.
His brother's there.
Dad went there.
His dad went there. He's a legacy, whatever, right? Like, I get it from that perspective. But that really is the only thing that would be even a reason why he would go there, because he's not going to start there. And I'm not even sure if he would be he'd be in the same kind of position where it's like, can he be the 4th corner? Can he be the third corner is probably in tough. They're loaded at safety too. So it's like, they don't have anything there. He's definitely, if he wanted to play receiver, I know he wants to play DB, but if he wanted to play receiver, a 0 chance he'd ever play there. So I would think, and I have no idea what Cincinnati's depth chart is, but I'm just saying as like a place, like if Cincinnati, if you thought they had opportunities to play or compete there or get into the mix of their depth chart, I would think more of a place like that would be something like, I have no idea what, Purdue, whatever, right? Like other places. The guy can obviously, he's got talent. He should still play Power 5 football.
For sure. Yeah.
Right. He should still play Power 5 football. And frankly, he should want to go there and try to prove himself at a Power 5 school, because it'll just help him if he wants to have a chance at the NFL. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Here's the one thing that everyone should always remember about this is Houston Griffith went into the portal after really not really doing anything at Notre Dame. And there were he got 10 legit offers right away. Like, people wanted him. And people are desperate. They'll just take a chance on somebody, especially now because it's May. And if someone has or it's going to be May, and it's, no pun intended there on the it's going to be May. But if you know, you know. But if there are teams that have definitely, whether they had injuries or they just know they're like, we don't like what we got at corner, or we don't like whatever, that they will take a chance on a guy like him in a heartbeat. But he's really got to be smart about where he goes. And I hope he picks the right spot, and I hope he's able to kind of get his career going, because I think it would be an awful waste of talent if the guy doesn't end up really doing much in college, especially after, because there's just so few guys that end up like doing the, like making the kind of plays he did or having the kind of game he did in the bowl game there in as a true freshman, and then to not like do anything after, like that would be pretty sad. And I hope that doesn't happen for him. And like, you don't want to be in the same conversations like KJ Stefferson.
Yeah.
Who obviously those are all like big time self-inflicted, decisions that screwed him. But like, he just doesn't want to be in that. And I hope he gets the right spot, picks the right spot for him, and is able to, go somewhere and have some success. And it was going to be tough. It was going to be tough for him.
Yep. All right. I think we'll leave it there. I think one of the big things today, Jamie, is no injuries, right? I don't think there were any kind of injuries or anything like that. So that's what you always want, right? Notre Dame can go into the offseason healthy, get guys healthy, continue to grow as a team and that sort of thing. I think there were a lot of things today that, there's a lot of things you can build on, right? Good at quarterback, good at receiver, good on the lines, that sort of thing. So we'll see what they do in the portal. And we're going to be tracking that at irishsportsdaily.com. So you're going to want to stay with us. And if you haven't, this is your first time listening to the show, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, head over to ESQclothing.com. This is the last day of the spring special, 23% off ISD Spring in the promo code. That's what you want to type in, ISD Spring. Raise your shirt game. They got really good stuff over there. God's doing great things. So check out ESQclothing.com. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Gigi, Cryptic, Kenny Minchie didn't have the blocking, couldn't show really anything today. That it was just unfortunate. Better days ahead for him. So that's what we're going to say about him. So that's the last thing. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be
just
back
one other
week.
Plug for ISD, too, because in case for everyone who's following recruiting, I mean, there's Notre Dame got their first 2025 commitment yesterday, 4-star defensive tackle, Davion Dixon, and
Cole Mullins.
They got as edge rusher today, a guy I'm a big fan of. Really think he's got a high ceiling. Think there's going to be some more good news coming out this weekend. So just, keep it posted because there's going to be some more movement. I think Notre Dame is about to get on a roll here. So,
yep. Stay locked in irishsportsdaily.com. We're going to have updates on everyone who was there. It's going to be great coverage. Matt and Christian are going to do a great job with that. So stay locked in irishsportsdaily.com. We'll be back next week. I have an interview planned for Monday with a former player who was at the spring game today. So, be looking out for that on Monday. I don't know if it'll be live. It might just be just may record it and show up in the pod feeds and on YouTube. So we'll see about that. But once more time, thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a good rest of the weekend, and we will talk to you next week.